Hello and welcome to another edition of Questions for Lawyers. I'm your host, Jeff Adelman. The purpose of this show is to introduce the community to different lawyers, different specialties, and to let you know what questions you should be asking a legal professional if you need a consultation. Well, today we have somebody who I've had on in the past. He's a good friend of mine. He is an excellent appellate lawyer. He is the current chair of the Coral Springs Chamber of Commerce, and I'm really happy to welcome back to the show my dear friend, Ron.Renzy. Ron, welcome back.
Jeff, it's a pleasure to be back. I'm happy to be on the show again, and I got to commend you to keep doing this, to keep everybody informed.
Well, did you bring your mug from last time?
Yeah, I did not. I'm not drinking coffee right now. I'm having some water, but I have my mug and I use it quite often. And every time I think of you, and it's still funny. It's still funny after all this time.
If any of you didn't see it, the mug says, with great beard comes great responsibility. So there's only one man I could think of when I saw that mug, but I'm glad it's still in circulation, Ron.
Oh, definitely. I love it. Well,
enough about beards and mugs and all that. I'm very happy for you to see that you're the chair of the chamber. What a great thing for Coral Springs. And what are your plans during your tenure?
Well, Jeff, first, I'm very excited to be the 2022 chair of the Coral Springs Coconut Creek Regional Chamber of Commerce. Now that we have two cities in there, I'm excited to be. I've been in the chamber a long time now. I've been on the executive committee. I've been on various committees and networking groups. Was chair of the Government and Punitive Relations Committee. So taking over chair, I'm just working with a lot of great people there at the chamber. Cindy Brief, the president, I know her well, and she was kind enough to ask me to do this and take me under her wing. So each year we have some new initiatives. This year, the chamber's focusing on affordable housing. We figure there's a lot of need right now with the economy for affordable housing. Basically, a lot of people work in cities that they can't afford to live. The rents are sky high. And it's something that affects the community, but it also affects small businesses, which are the majority of the members of our chamber, as well as the large businesses. So that is one of the initiatives. I mean, there's various things that the chamber does. They have a great education committee, a great ambassador committee. I mean, it's a large chamber. So my role is to kind of try and spearhead things, add a little bit of my footprint to it, or my fingerprints, depending on the way you look at it, and work with the board of directors. I get to do things like run the board meetings and that kind of stuff. But I'm excited about it. Really good people there. And I always say I'm just one among equals. It's not my chamber, but I'm here to add any little voice that I can, any assistance that I can do.
Well, we're all very lucky to have you. And what you brought up, I mean, the first time we did this, you were in my office and we did this in person, and now we're in Zoom world, and it's a lot easier in a lot of ways, but it definitely makes certain things with business a lot harder, and with small businesses in particular.
Jeff, I agree with you 100% on that. Small businesses are having trouble. I mean, it's difficult to find people. It's difficult to get the word out there. Some people are still, some businesses are, well, I guess most businesses are open now, but it makes it difficult to run your business. I mean, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. I hope it's starting to taper down, but we don't know. So I think you have an interesting combination of small businesses that can't find people to work there, and workers that can't afford to live in the area to work there. So it's a chicken and the egg situation that's kind of bad for everybody. So it's something that needs to be addressed, and we're trying to do our small part, among other things. We want to help businesses along and see what we work with both cities of Coral Springs and Coconut Creek to see what they can do to help businesses and help the community. So it's been a good partnership so far, but obviously there's things that need to be addressed.
Absolutely. And my apologies for not mentioning Coconut Creek to my friend Josh Rydell and the rest of the crew in Coconut Creek. I neglect it's Coral Springs and Coconut Creek. And if anybody wants to get in touch with the chamber to help their business or to inquire about these issues, what's the best way to get in touch with the chamber?
I would say the best way is to go through their website. It's a bunch of C's. C. Coral Springs, Coconut Creek. So it's a bunch of C. Best way is Google it, because I'm gonna give you way too many C's.
I
It's
gotcha.
because it's Coconut Creek Regional Chamber of Commerce, and I know that's a mouthful.
Well, I just looked at csccrchamber.com.
Thank you.
So
See, every time
yeah,
I never type it in correctly, so I'm glad that you gave it out to
yeah. If
everybody
you
for
type
me.
in Coral Springs Chamber in Google, it comes
It
right
comes
up, and
right
it's
up.
a very strong chamber of commerce. If you're not a part of it, highly recommend it. Well,
It's a
let's
great
talk.
chamber.
You've had some significant changes in your law practice in the past month. Would you tell us a little about that?
Yes. After 25 years with the same law firm of Wahlberg and Renzy in Coral Springs, my partner Wendy Wahlberg accepted a full-time position at teaching at um, Lynn University in Boca Raton. She's always loved teaching and giving back to the community, so she decided to do that full time. So I'm transitioning into my new firm, which is called Sunshine Appeals PA. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing. I'm still an appellate lawyer, basically appeals and litigation support. So I decided to open my own firm. For whatever reason, I figured, well, I don't want to be boring and just put ron.renzy PA. So I want to put something that you know what it is. And I came up with Sunshine Appeals. So yeah, so that's my new firm, just launched at the beginning of the year. So I'm still in transition as we speak, but looking forward to just doing my appeals.
Same great service, same great Ron Renzy. So I love it.
That's it. You got it.
Yeah, that's your tag. No extra charge for that. Um, but in any event, you mentioned something about support. You're talking about trial litigation support. Tell me a little bit about that aspect of your business for the lawyers who might be watching this show.
Sure. For all of my trial lawyers friends, especially busy trial lawyers like you, Jeff, busy trial lawyers, sometimes you don't have the time to do what we call litigation support. It could be drafting motions, summary judgments, or motion to dismiss, or it could be attending a trial, more as a observer to make sure the trial lawyers keeps abreast of what needs to be done to preserve the record, just in case it's an appeal. So kind of basically litigation support is exactly what it is. It's really two things. It's drafting, consulting with my trial lawyer colleagues, or actually attending trials and hearings to look at it from the appellate point of view. Because as you know, as a trial lawyer, you got a pretty gut feeling of what's going to possibly be appealed. So it's better to have somebody like me sitting there to say, Mr. Trial Lawyer, say this. It may not seem relevant now, but it may help me in my world, in my world of appeals.
And what type of cases do you get involved with in appeals?
Well, basically, being an appellate lawyer, you have the happy fortune to be involved in all kinds of cases. For instance, I mean, even as of late, I've handled personal injury cases, commercial litigation cases, family law cases, and constitutional cases. So what I find is, I get to, it's kind of a weird world, as you have to know the appellate rules, but it's good to delve into different areas of the law to help our trial lawyers out. So basically, if you have an issue that you need an appeal or litigation support, I'm here for you.
And how can people get in touch with you?
Probably two ways is the best way. The firm phone number, which is the same it's been for 25 years, is 954-757-1212. And my email, which is new, is ron.renzy, RENZY, at sunshineappeals.us. Either of those ways, and I'll be happy to chat. I love chatting with both clients and fellow attorneys.
Have you noticed an uptick in handling summary judgment motions with the new Celotex being adopted by state courts in Florida? Have you noticed you're getting more calls concerning that?
Yes, I have. I have noticed, and we're just kind of on the verge because the rule hasn't been out there that long, but people do their summary judgments, and by the time you get hearings, so we're just starting to see that. So there have been a few, and I anticipate there's going to be a lot of appeals in that area, so people can kind of get it straight. Even though I know we're following the federal standard, it still has to transition over and how it's going to apply in Florida courts. So yes, I have noticed calls on at this point more like, can you take a look at the motion that I drafted and tell me what you think as far, if you think I'm complying with the rule, or on the opposite, I have this motion for summary judgment that we're going to hearing on, the other side filed it, what do you think? And I might give a tip, you might want to put this in your response, or at the hearing get into this. Every case is different, so it's definitely a verging area, definitely.
Got it. And I know as a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer, our concern is that the judges are more apt to grant summary judgment, taking the case away from a jury and, well, then I guess sending it to an appellate lawyer like yourself.
I agree with that. I think it's, in many ways, just a change in the law. We have our personal opinions. I think the, jury, I'm a big proponent of the jury. I think it's part and parcel of the most important thing our system has. Federal court's been doing that for years. And if you look at the federal cases, it's pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but it was much easier to get a summary judgment if you're a defendant than it was in Florida state court. I mean, as you well know, being a plaintiff's lawyer, summary judgment is something you always had in your mind, but now you really got to worry about it. It's really a thing. And I think it's part and parcel with the different rules to try and move cases along. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you're on, I think it's going to be easier for people to get summary judgment. And I think it's going to be easier for defendants to get summary judgment. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems that way. And, that's not the only, big change over the past year, year and a half. Punitive damages have been in the news in Florida. Can you speak a little bit about what changes have occurred with getting punitive damages, the ability to seek them, and then the person who could potentially have punitive damages against them, what they can do about it even before going to trial?
Right. There has been a change as far as in the appellate perspective. There's a new rule that came out this year that really changes the landscape as far as punitive damages. The way the law was before, and as you know, as a plaintiff's trial lawyer, you request punitive damages, and if the standards were met under the statute, the judge either ruled for and against. And the only thing that appellate court can do was you would have to take a writ of certiorari, which is basically a way of asking the appellate court to look at that. But the standard was low, or the standard was high, depending way you look at it. As long as the trial court followed the procedures, the appellate court really couldn't say you were wrong or you were right. For whatever reason, that's changed now. Now it's one of the many things that you can do, what we call appeal of a non-final order. So if the judge issues the order, either granting it or denying it, you can appeal that right away and say, appellate court, this shouldn't have been granted, or appellate court, this should have been granted, but now the court can go into the substantive reasons of why it should or shouldn't have been granted and can reverse or can affirm. So I think it's a major change. I think there's going to be a lot more appeals on that because there's going to be incentive either way. If you have it, if you're on the adverse side of a granting or denying of a motion for punitive damages, there's going to be incentive to appeal. So I think that's going to be a big change in the area, and the appellate courts haven't really delved too much into it yet, but I think they're going to be much more heavily involved rather than saying, yes, trial judge, you follow the rules and we can't say anything else about it. It's a major change.
And for lay people out there, punitive damages is a phrase that's kind of nonchalantly thrown out there.
Right.
You can't just say, I want punitive damages. You actually have to get permission from your judge after you've filed your lawsuit to additionally add a count for punitive damages. You can't just plead it and then have it be sitting there. You actually have to get permission to do it. That's something that a lot of lay people do not know. So it makes a big difference.
It definitely does make a difference. And you're absolutely right, Jeff. It's something people say, I'm going to mute for punitive damages. A client will come in, but it's a really big process. You have to get the judge to agree. And as you know, once a judge agrees that punitive damage is a part of the case, it opens up a lot more information that you, as a lawyer, can get. So
Right.
it's a big deal.
And cases that I do, for example, drunk driving or texting while driving, those could potentially lead to a judge allowing punitive damages, but not just somebody's a jerk or anything like that. That's not, because then we'd have a lot more, we'd have even more punitive damages.
Yeah. Oh, yes. If we change it to the jerk standard, every case we have
Man,
punitive
that's just a great phrase, Ron. You need to make that stick. But let me ask you this. Both of those situations, now the court took their own initiative, made those changes, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Now,
The Florida Supreme Court. I mean, they take on their own initiative, and they take information from both sides of the issue, and then make a decision. But yeah, that's true.
in your experience, I mean, you've been practicing how long?
This is my 30th year.
Okay. In your experience, have you seen the Florida Supreme Court act in this fashion as often as they have over the past year or two?
No, I haven't. I mean, usually, to get changes before the Florida Supreme Court, it usually takes sometimes years of lobbying, and pushing, and I think, I'm not sure, but some of it could be related. And we say everything's related to the pandemic, but this could be related because, as you know, from the trial courts, there's been a move to try and move cases along. And this could be part and parcel of what the Supreme Court is doing, as to kind of refurbish things a little bit. They've been looking at a lot of different things. So no, I haven't seen it as recently as it's been.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely right.
it just seems like on their own initiative, they're doing a lot of different changes to the law. And usually that stems from, like you said, years of lobbying, or a case comes in front of them.
Right.
There's not specifically a case in front of them that they're making these changes.
No, they're not. They're determining that changes need to be made, for whatever reason they determine, whether it's cases need to be moved along. There's been cases have been stagnant. There's been a lot of rulings one way or the other, and they have the ability to fine tune things to hopefully make it better for everybody in the state.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's their prerogative. They're the Florida Supreme Court. So
they are in charge.
They're in charge. Well, we've talked a little bit about your trial support, about your appellate work. Is there any other area of your practice that you would like to tell the listeners about?
No, I mean, that's pretty much what I'm focused on, the litigation support and the appellate practice. I do think, if our lawyer friends understand, our lay people don't always understand what an appeal really is. I always tell new clients, it's not a second trial. You've had, your trial is your trial. It's basically a mistake that was done at the trial court, maybe the judge. I mean, nobody knows everything all the time. So when you say the judge made a mistake, it's not, you're not accusing anybody of anything. We all make errors, and it could be a complicated error of the law. And that's what the appellate courts are for, to correct it. You get one right of appeal. We'll use Florida. Federal's the same. You get a right of appeal on many issues. And then if you want to go to a higher court, you have to ask the court's permission. And most of the time they don't grant it. So usually you get one shot, I always say.
Right. And I'm sure you do get a lot of calls for doing an appeal, but I'm sure most of the time you have to say no.
Yeah, a lot of time you have to say no, because people, obviously, if people are upset that they lost their case for whatever reason, I mean, that doesn't mean it's appealable. There has to be, let's say, for instance, at a trial that maybe evidence was omitted that it shouldn't have been. That may be an appealable issue. Or there was a legal ruling that doesn't comport with what maybe the Florida Supreme Court said. That may be appealable. But the fact that a jury of your peers found that you didn't meet your burden, either as a plaintiff or defendant, that's not necessarily appealable.
Right. It's sometimes a hard pill to swallow, but again, what you do is some of the hardest legal work there is, and trying to find those type of mistakes and giving somebody really their last chance to get justice. So I certainly appreciate what you do and how difficult it is for you to do. But Ron, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm hoping that we get to see each other again very, very soon.
I look forward to it.
Long overdue. And if you could just tell everybody again how they can get in touch with you.
Sure, I really appreciate it. You have any questions? I love talking appeals, and I don't mind answering questions. You can reach me at my office at 954-757-1212. That's 954-757-1212. Or send me an email at ron.renzy, ron.renzy at sunshineappeals.us.
Well, thank you, Ron, and good luck with your tenure with the Coral Springs Coconut Creek Chamber of Commerce. I know you're going to do just a terrific job, and I'm just very happy for the chamber and happy for you.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, I appreciate you giving us your time. If you have any legal questions, I'm always reachable. My name is Jeff Adelman. I'm with Brotman, Nussbaum, Ibrahim, and Adelman. My phone number is 561-417-5656. You could reach me by email, jeff@lawbni.com. If you have a legal question, or if you're an attorney and you'd like to be on the show and be interviewed, we would love to have you. But I would just want to thank everybody for watching, listening, and have a good rest of your week. Be well. Thanks, Ron.